All right, welcome to this morning's strong and steady practice yoga with weights. For this morning, the focus will be on postures and exercises that tend to be more on the mobility end of the spectrum. And I just want to speak to that briefly because I think somewhere along the way, especially in the yoga world, so I'll speak for myself, we have been taught that like you're either strong or you're mobile, but you can't be both, and that's not really true. In fact, you can use weights to help with your mobility and increase your range of motion. Yes, if you are a bodybuilder using supplements and growing your latissimus dorsi to ginormous amounts of muscle, then yes, your mobility will be impaired. But that's not really what most of us are doing, right? And by the way, those poor men who decide to do that for a living, like really do have trouble getting around or even getting up the stairs because they don't have a lot of strength. They just have specific like muscle mass. Anyway, I can tell you all about my little delve into the bodybuilding world another day. But let's move on with our mobility with weights. So for today, if you have them, it's nice to have a blanket, mostly to pad the knees, and one or maybe two weights. I have a 3-pound Pilates ball, and then I have a 10-pound dumbbell. If you have something a little bit heavier, you might be able to use it in one of the movements that we're going to be doing, one or two of the movements that we're going to be doing a little bit later. I will also say that for lots of reasons, you don't have to use the weight. Like we're going to do these movements and you can get some benefit from them absolutely without the weight. In fact, there will be one or two that I personally will not be using the weight on because I'm still recovering from a little bit of stuff that happened to my midsection a few weeks ago. All right, so let's begin. If you are already standing, go ahead and start standing. If you want to stay seated or in your cozy spot, just to check in with yourself. You can do this in any way that you like, moving or still. I like to start eyes open. Check in with your surroundings. I'm staring out the window at snow falling at the moment. Maybe your view is of something else. And then look inside and check with your inner landscape. Notice what it feels like to be in your body right now. And welcome all of the things that emerge as part of your experience. Thoughts, feelings, sensations. Notice your natural breath pattern. And there's nothing you need to change about it. Simply enjoy breathing. And throughout our practice together, I encourage you to continue to breathe with the mouth closed as best you can. Sometimes when we ask the body to do something more intense, for example, it might the mouth wants to open, and that's kind of to try to save you. But for most people, they don't really need that. You can keep your mouth closed and try to keep the breath moving in and out through the nose. All right, feel free to stay with whatever moment you're in for as long as you'd like. If you're ready to move, let's warm up with a few arm circles. Oh, excuse me. And these can be slow or small or big or even fast and out to the side. You can keep the hands on the shoulders and move the elbows. And since today's topic is mobility, when I think of a place that I have personally limited mobility, I'm going to blame lots of years in ballet point shoes, is my ankles. It's partly my body structure and how I'm built, but also probably a lot of time in ballet shoes. So if you like, you can combine a little heel raise with your arm circles. And if that's too many things at once, or you want to hold on to something for balance, then feel free to hold on to the wall or a chair. Or if you have a very large pet that's nearby who wants to play along. And go in all different kinds of directions with your arms. All right. Speaking of the ankles, let's do the Dasha Chalana, which is the 10 churnings. It's a nice way to get the joints lubricated, and part of mobility is lubrication, right? If the lubrication in the joints isn't there, it's really hard to move the joints. So step over onto your left foot, bring your right toes to the ground. If the toes have been injured recently, then maybe bring the ball of the foot to the floor and start to circle the heel around behind you. And so this can kind of feel like a nice toe squish, a little bit of an ankle roll behind you, a little bit of the knee moving around, and even the hip, the thigh rolling around inside of the hip. So see if you can make this like a whole leg experience. Change directions. And then switch legs. So step on the other one. Again, a little balance comes into play here. So feel free to hold on to something. And it's not giving up on your balance. It's just making this movement possible, right? Change directions. And then bring the feet a little closer together, bend the knees and bring the hands to the tops of your thighs and steer your knees around in a circle. Even though this looks like your knees are circling, it's really more about your feet, your ankles, the shin rolling around inside the ankle joint. And then change directions. And then come on up to stand, twist with your arms swinging, lovingly patting your body as you turn from one side to the other. And I'm particularly aware today that twisting in one direction feels more spacious and open. And then when I get to the other side, I feel a little bit more constricted. And that's fairly normal for most people. You might have a different experience. And then at some point, turn this into a hip circle. Around and around and around. Change directions. And then shrug your shoulders up, back, and down. Change directions. One more time to the back, otherwise it just gets weird. And then bring your hands together, interlace the fingers, and pump your elbows up and down so that your wrists can roll around. Change directions. And then shake your hands like you have water on them. Nice, let's go to the head and neck. So look straight in front of you and imagine you have a paintbrush on your nose and paint a circle on the wall in front of you. So this doesn't have to be a very big circle. Ideally, you have the eyes open. That helps to increase the stretch through the different muscles that are involved in the neck. But if it makes you dizzy, slow things down or make them smaller. Find a way to pause before you switch and go the other direction. All right. And then let's come down. Let's grab one of your weights if you like, or start without. I'm going to start without. If I were going to grab a weight, which I will in a minute, it'll be my lighter weight, my 3-pound weight. You could grab whatever you have. And then let's move into a weighted forward fold or Jefferson curl. So there are 2 ways you can do this. We've been working with this for the last couple of weeks. You could either sort of hold the weight in your hand near your belly and then dip your chin down, roll yourself down, let the weight help you come down any amount. Feel free to bend the knees a lot and then push the feet into the floor and reverse that to come all the way up. So your arms are more or less straight. They're just holding the weight to add this to the experience. So this is the rolly version, or in the weightlifting world, we call it a Jefferson curl. The other option is to keep the back more straight and hinge forward, like you would coming into a forward fold, and then push into the feet and rise back up. Either way, you want to bend your knees quite a bit. And you can play with both variations. And you can play with doing it with or without the weight. I like to start without the weight, especially given that I'm recovering from a little bit and still regaining some strength in my trunk muscles. And then adding the weight, even just the 3 pounds, for me helps feel like I can almost have a better sense of direction in this movement. And that can be one of the great benefits of adding weight, even just a small amount of weight to a movement or a posture, is to strengthen not only the bones and the muscle tissues and the connective tissues, but the sense of direction and movement that's happening. You can take this at any speed you like. I'm going to do one more. And then come on up to stand. You can keep the weight in your hands if you like for this next one. I'm going to put it down to show you what we're going to do first. So you're going to have your hands in front of you. And instead of doing arm circles like we were one at a time and separated, we're going to keep the hands connected and work with a little mobility in the shoulders by moving the arms together, almost in a circle around the upper body and head. So you only have to go as far back as feels possible. And then when you add the weight, even just a little bit of weight, this changes the experience a lot. If you decide to pick up the weight and you're like, ooh, that was a lot of weight, feel free to put it back down. And there's no rush. Try going the other way as well. And notice Any differences? Maybe the circles feel a little different. Maybe there's a part of your body that feels stronger in one direction. I'm going to go the other direction again a few times. Now, if you were going to, we're not doing this as part of this program, but if you were over time, say over several weeks, perhaps feeling a little stronger with your shoulders and you were to add the weight, the more weight you add, the more you tend to also feel this in the trunk. Maybe you are feeling it in the trunk already. Okay. You can keep exploring, or when you're ready for the next one, let's put the weight back down onto the floor and start with the movement first. So step your right foot way back like a warrior one shape, bend your left knee. And this might feel good partly because if it's familiar, something can feel really good. Nice. And then hinge forward a little bit and come up. Hinge forward and come up. I'm putting my hands on my hips for now. You can have them anywhere you like. If you want a little more challenge or even basically adding weight, you could bring your arms up overhead and hinge forward and then come up. And then maybe hinge forward and pause. And then come on up. Bring your hands down to your hips. Hinge forward and see if you can step forward and kick your right foot off of the ground and transition to Warrior 3 or Virabhadrasana 3, Flying Warrior. And just notice how that feels today. If you decide you want to come back down on 2 feet, which is going to be me because this side of my waist doesn't want to do that quite yet, that's okay too. All right, when you've had enough fun, step down, walk your feet together, shake it out. And then let's try that on the other side. So start with Warrior 1, Virabhadrasana 1. Step your left foot back. This time bend your right knee. And you might pause here to enjoy this shape. Remember, by themselves, a lot of these shapes help to strengthen. You are walking around in a probably at least 100 pounds, if not more, of weight, of resistance, of load. So your body is already used to load. When we add a weight or we change how we do the shape, that's why it can be really beneficial because we're changing the resistance, the load that the body's used to. So feel free to play with hinging forward a few times. If you want, bring the arms up overhead and play with how that feels. Again, if it ever becomes too much, you can change the arms again, change your mind. And just notice your breath. You don't have to do anything fancy with it. Sometimes if we're concentrating on something new, we open the mouth, see if you can keep the lips closed. And maybe pause with your torso at an angle. If you like arms up overhead, notice that. And then shift forward, maybe lifting the left leg for Warrior 3, Flying Warrior, Virabhadrasana 3. When you've had enough fun, step down, land your airplane, shake everything out, or maybe do whatever other movements your instincts tell you, like a hip circle or something else. And then if you like, grab a light weight. I'll show you what we're doing first, and you can always add the weight in later if you like. So instead of starting, in Warrior Two like we just did, and then kicking up, let's start with both feet on the ground. Have the weight in your right hand if you have it, and then kick your right foot back behind you. You're gonna hinge forward and at the same time lift the leg. Allow your hands to drop forward, or at least your right hand with the weight. And now you're in Warrior Three again, but it feels different this time, right? If possible, from here, maybe with a little bend in your standing leg, come back up to your starting position. And then hinge again, lift the leg, weighted Warrior Three. And then come back up. Now, if you started with the weight and you're like, ooh, that's a lot going on, do it without. If you have a yoga block at home, that might be less weight, but still something in your hand to help you with a sense of direction in this pose. So try that a few times in your own rhythm. And it's funny because for me, when I tried to hold the Warrior Three earlier, this was where my waist was feeling a little bit weak, but now that I have the weight in my right hand, it totally changes the experience. And my standing leg feels like it's doing a little more of the work. We're also working with some mobility in the waist with this hinging motion. All right, when you've had enough fun on one side, go ahead and switch the weight to your left hand so we can try the other. And if you decide to go back to a Warrior Two with 2 feet on the ground, totally fine. Remember, all of this is optional. So now the left hand reaches down as you kick your left leg back behind you. And you only have to go as far as feels good for you. Some of you have extra long arms. You may end up reaching closer to the floor. I'm going to try one more. And then take a break. How you doing? How did that one feel? I find it amazing how just even having a weight in the hands and doing the same shape, very little weight, just changes the experience entirely. Now, sometimes after you do some weighted things and you go back to yoga practices without weights, one of two things can tend to happen, and many things could happen, but one of two things could tend to happen. One, you get back into those familiar poses and you're like, yes, right? Because maybe you're stronger and you've developed some more specific strength for them. Or sometimes they feel like nothing. You're like, oh, this is different than what I remember. So, all right. For this next one, we're going to play with a squat. So squatting can mean different things for different people. The idea here is we'll use the weight to help us in the squat. So I want to give you a few options and you can play with both. The first, and this is where I like to use a little bit of a heavier weight. So if you have one that you want to work with, great. If not, don't worry about it. The first one is a little bit more of a wide stance. You can have your toes at any angle. And then maybe bring the weight either down in both hands in front of you, or it can be up near your chest. And either of those are going to be very different. And then bend your knees any amount and sit in your squat. Now, if you're just starting here, maybe you back in and out of it a few times until you find the version of the squat that you want to be in. I'm going to go really wide today, more like a goddess squat. And you only have to bend as far as feels good, and you don't have to use the weight. There's plenty going on. So that's option one. And you can pause for a few moments, hold the squat, and then come out. Another option, if your body lets you bend your knees a lot more, actually, I'm going to leave the weight on the floor. It's a little safer. And then bend down any amount. It's okay if your heels pop up. In fact, that might be part of the mobility work, right? And even just here, you can wiggle a little bit side to side. Now, if you'd like, you can bring the weight into it. And I find, especially in this variation, the weight helps me feel like I'm a little more solid, a little heavier in the shape. And it's putting a little bit of an extra load on my joints to help both strengthen them, but also create some possibilities for mobility. And so if you feel comfortable also wiggling around with the weight in your hand, you might play with how that feels. Again, lots of options, and you could do both. You might take a break, maybe lift the hips, forward fold, and then you could come back up and squat in the other way. So explore here for a few moments. If you had two weights, and ideally they're the same weight, but they don't have to be because you can switch. You could also place the weight itself on your thigh and hold it carefully. And then that adds a very different element to the weightedness of this shape. So lots of choices. You're in charge and in choice. And then take a break when you're ready. Maybe a little, my body wants to do a forward fold. Maybe your body wants something different. Trust yourself. And then we're going to make our way down to the floor. So if you have a blanket to pad your knees, this can be a place for it. If you've got a really cushy carpet, maybe you don't want one. And then enjoy some time here. No weight, just movement. Wiggling the hips or circling them around, or maybe some cat-cow. Round your back, and then lower the belly to arch. Again, trust yourself and trust your instincts to tell you how and where to move. You might shift back into child's pose for a moment. And come on to sit with your feet out in front, wide. Swish the knees a few times from side to side. And the next move we're going to play with is variation on pigeon. So if you sit on your bum, but swing your legs around to your left so that your right shin is in front of you and your left leg is kind of folded a little behind you. You're in a yin style pigeon, or a relaxed pigeon, shall we call it. And from here, as best you can, keep your torso fairly tall. as opposed to curling into yourself. So keeping it relatively tall, hinge forward and bow over the front of your legs, and then come on up. And try again in that same direction. And then switch so that you're at a little bit of an angle now, maybe turning towards the knee more, and then hinge forward and come on up. And you are welcome to use the hands to help you come back up. Depending on how you're feeling today, that might be exactly where you continue to play. But keep changing the angle a little bit. So pick a different angle or direction to fold in. And it might just be a tiny shift that you make. If you want to take this to the next level as far as increasing the load, you'd lift the hands up. I keep them sort of behind my head or on the side of my head, and then hinge forward, whoo, and then come back up. So no weight, but just changing the arms changes the load. Right? And if that's too much for today, use the hands. Option 3, especially if you have one of the lighter weights, I don't recommend going too crazy here. You can hold it near your chest and then try a few pigeon bows with the weight at your chest. If that's too much, again, drop the weight, use your hands, help yourself back up. Try a couple more and then we'll switch sides. When you're ready, swing the legs around to your right. So now your left shin is in front. And start no weight, just the hands helping you hinge. Choose a different direction and then hinge. And feel free to continue exploring like that. Option 2, maybe you bring the hands up. Ooh, I don't know why, for some reason, hands up, it almost feels more challenging to me than having the weight at my chest. Notice what's true for you. So feel free if you like to use the weight. And remember, left and right may feel very different, so you don't have to do it the same way on this side. All right, when you've had enough fun with that, place the weight down, swing the legs forward, shake it out. We'll do one more thing together and then cool down, flow. Step your legs wide now, not your widest, but just generally wide. And then we'll do a similar bowing movement. So you'll bow forward and then come on up. Bow forward and then come on up. Maybe you bring your hands behind your head and try it. So now similar focus in terms of ability, but you may be feeling different things because your legs are in a different position. Option 3, maybe you have the weight near your chest. Try 2 or 3 more. Beautiful. And then release the weight, bring your legs together. Give them a little shake, a shimmy, a flip flap. And I'm moving my weights a little bit out of the way here. I'm adjusting my blanket so that it's where my back is going to go. And then we did this a couple weeks ago, but I wanted to remind you of it, to use it today as sort of a cool down flow. So you can start without the weight if you like, but reach forward as if you're moving towards a seated forward fold. And then come on up and lean back. If possible, roll yourself down. I need to bend my knees to do that. You might need to do the same. And then reach your arms up overhead towards the floor behind you. Option to lift the legs to the sky. and then lower them down, either one or both at a time. And then lift your hands to the sky. If possible, roll yourself forward. I need to help myself up to do that today. And then you're back in your forward fold. So this could be your flow. And if you wanted to, you could have a very light weight in your hands and use, and for some people, this actually helps with the movement. When you have the hands in the air, your weight comes back to the floor behind you, and then lift the legs to the sky. Feel free to come down one or both at a time. You move the weight or just the hands up and forward. Help yourself. Sometimes this is where the momentum of the weight helps you come on up. I need a little bit of a different help today. And then forward fold. If you're enjoying this flow, try it one more time. And then pause in the forward fold next time you're there and enjoy a moment here. Now roll all the way down onto your back, draw the knees in towards your chest, and rock gently from side to side. Let your feet fall to the floor and twist your knees over to your right. Pause there for a moment. And then let your knees come up and over to your left, twisting to the other side. Enjoy here for a moment. Now let your feet come flat to the floor, knees bent. And bring the hands either alongside or maybe on the body, belly or chest or both. And enjoy a few moments. Allow your natural cycle of breath to slow down. Allow your nervous system to regulate after exploring new movements, maybe some challenging ones. Beyond the more literal benefits of yoga with weights or increasing strength and mobility, these practices are also intended to help us practice regulating the nervous system. We engage in something, we're active, we're excited, and then can the body relax afterwards? This will help you, all of us, better prepare for any time we get excited or there's an additional stress in our lives, whether it's a physical weight in our hands or something else, so that our body can regulate again after the stress is over. If you have a few more minutes to simply be here or rest in your own way, you could also continue any stretches or other practice that you have that you like. Feel free. If you're getting ready for whatever's next in your day, roll to one side, come on up to sit. Let yourself orient to your space again, orient to your body again. And And I thank you so much for being here. I wish you a wonderful day. Maybe it's a snow day like mine is. And if you're here live, I'll be on for a few minutes to say hi. If you're watching the recording, please leave a comment. I love to know how these practices feel for you.